Kate Ladwig and I'm here today to discuss and explain the law of diminishing marginal returns and how this can be used in correlation with the agricultural sector. Throughout the presentation, I shall cover what the law of diminishing marginal returns is, two practical examples involving both livestock and cropping examples, discuss at what point the law becomes apparent, and the purpose of the law when practically applied to real-world situations. The law of diminishing returns states that in a production process, as one input variable increases per unit, there will be a point at which the marginal return will start to decrease whilst holding all other factors constant. This means that eventually the additional output of the production process will decrease as the point of the input is increased. This is the diminishing marginal return. Here we have example 1 of a farmer and his 1 acre corn crop. The table demonstrates the application rate of fertiliser per unit in column 1, the number of ears of corn for the crop in column 2, and the marginal return in column 3. For this situation, the farmer is increasing the application rate of his fertiliser whilst keeping all other factors such as water, labour and seed constant. Again, we have the table from the previous slide with the table's contents displayed within a graph. The first 3 applications of fertiliser sees the number of ears increasing along with the marginal returns of the crop. This is what we call a positive return for the business, as the amount of input is lower than the outputs, causing an increase in the number of corn ears. This increasing trend is also seen for that of the marginal returns. For the 4th and 5th application of fertiliser, the number of corn ears is still increasing, but the marginal return has dropped, and is what we refer to as the diminishing marginal return. This does not mean that the production of the crop is decreasing, but that the input to output ratio has shifted. Looking at the 6th and final application of fertiliser presented in the table, says that the number of ears of corn has dropped, causing a negative return for the farmer. Therefore, the law of diminishing returns is proven correct, as the law states that there will be a point where the increase of fertiliser will cause the output to become smaller, in this case the number of corn ears. For our second example today, we have a feedlot herd of 50, with their group averaging a weight in column 2, the marginal returns in column 3, and the feed units in column 1. The feedlot is to increase the feeding unit in order to fatten the cattle, whilst all other factors such as water, labour and handling is kept constant. Once again, we have the table from the previous slide and the results displayed on a graph. The first 2 units of feed sees the total weight of the group increasing, as well as the marginal returns. This is also present on our graph for both pieces of data. The 3rd and 4th increase in feed still sees the overall weight of the livestock increasing, but here we've reached our diminishing marginal return, as the marginal return between application 2 and 3 has shifted. The significant drop in the marginal return between the 2 of our diminishing marginal returns, although the group herd is still putting on weight. Observing the final 2 units of feed application, we see that the weight of the group is remaining constant before diminishing returns. Once again, the law of diminishing returns has been proven, as the amount of input has increased, the output began to decrease, revealing the diminishing return. At what point does the law actually become apparent? Mentioned in both examples, it is when the marginal return is less than the previous. Highlighted in both examples, in the light blue is the increase in marginal returns, or where the inputs are less than the outputs, resulting in a positive result. The middle of the tables, highlighted in yellow, is the point at which the diminishing marginal returns becomes apparent, as the marginal returns are less than those highlighted in the blue. In this section, the business is still seeing results in the form of growth of the livestock and crop ears, but the inputs are equal or less than the outputs in some cases. The bottom section of the table, highlighted in red, is where the inputs required are greater than the outputs, where there is no increase or a negative output due to the current unit of application. The reaction of a unit output can be due to many reasons, for a poor business decision, less than optimal conditions as well as weather conditions. In the case of corn farm, it is likely that too much fertiliser poisoned the crop, whilst the feedlot cattle were stressed due to uncontrollable circumstances or grain poisoning. So what is the purpose of the law and how it can be applied to everyday situations? The purpose of the law is to be able to assess and weigh up the positives and negatives of a situation, like if we were to have stopped fertiliser application at the third unit when the ears of corn were still at a positive return, or is it worth the risk to add those next 2 additional units of fertiliser and produce more ears of corn that have a diminishing marginal return? The law of diminishing marginal returns can be applied to many situations such as fertiliser application, feed ratios for livestock, or the number of staff required to run a business. The law of diminishing marginal returns is a law that can be applied to everyday decision-making processes. The law states that as a variable increases, there will be a point where the marginal returns will decrease whilst holding all other factors constant, meaning that the output will decrease eventually as the input increases, as we have demonstrated today in both examples within the presentation. I hope that you have learnt about the diminishing marginal returns, and thank you for listening.